Welcome back. 12 Science, English FL, Flamingo Unit for Ferret Trap. In the previous lecture, we had gone through difficult words, and now summary of the story. A red trap peddler, a red trap peddler went around selling small red traps, He had the look of a stout man. He had the look of a stout man. Sometimes he restored to begging. He restored to begging and a little stealing for survive. He had no home. He had no home or shelter. He led a lonely life. He led a lonely life. One day, he struck an idea that the world itself was a red trap. As soon as anybody touched it, as soon as anybody touched it, the trap closed on them. The trap closed on them. He was amused to think of some people who were already trapped. He was amused to think of the people who were already trapped. It was a cold evening in December. It was a cold evening in December. He reached a cottage on the roadside. He reached a cottage on the roadside. He knocked the door and asked for a night's shelter. He knocked the door and asked for a night shelter. The owner of the cottage was a lonely old man. The owner of the cottage was a lonely old man. He wanted someone to talk with him. He wanted someone to talk with him. He welcomed the peddler. He welcomed the red trap seller. Summary is continued. Summary is continued, but as the board is filled in, we shall write further after explaining this. A red trap peddler went around selling small red traps. There was a hawker who was wandering by walking in the streets for selling red traps. He had the look of a stout man. His appearance itself was of a very poor man. Sometimes he resorted to begging and a little stealing for survival. Every time he could not sell the red trap to the extent that he could buy food and clothing. So many a time he had to beg or stealing. He had no home or shelter. He had no home or shelter. He led a lonely life. He was alone in this world. One day he struck an idea that the whole world was a red trap. One day he struck an idea that the whole world is a red trap. Man comes into the world by taking birth, but then trapped, cannot go out. We cannot go into the space. Okay, so one day he struck a philosophical idea that the whole world is like a red trap. As soon as anybody touched it, the trap closed on it. If someone touched the world, just he was in it, taking birth. He was amused to think of the people who were already trapped. The people living in this world are like the trapped rats. It was a cold evening in December. It was a cold evening in December. He reached a cottage on the roadside. He reached a cottage on the roadside. He knocked the door and asked for a night's shelter. He knocked the door of the cottage and asked for a night's shelter. The owner of the cottage was a lonely old man. The owner of the cottage was a lonely old man. He wanted someone to talk with him. As being old and lonely outside the village, he wanted someone to talk with him. He welcomed the red trap peddler. So, the red trap peddler, when knocked the door and asked for a night's shelter, he welcomed him. Now, writing further, He gave the red trap seller food to eat, and tobacco to smoke. Then they played cards. Then they played cards. The lonely old man who was owner of the cabin was generous, and trustful. He told the peddler that he had a cow and he sold the milk to a creamery. He also told him that he had received $30 kronos as payment the previous month. Then he took down the pouch and showed the money showed the money to the red trap peddler. Next morning, the peddler left. Next morning, the peddler left. The crofter locked his cottage and went away. Locked his cottage and went away. The peddler came back to the cottage. The peddler came back to the cottage. He had been tempted to steal the money like a bite. In the red trap. Summary is continued. We just explained up to this and then we shall continue in the next lecture. In the next lecture also we shall give the summary and complete it. He gave the red trap peddler food to eat and tobacco to smoke. The red trap peddler, red trap hawker, had a philosophical idea that the whole world is a red trap. Everyone is trapped here, cannot go outside. As soon as he struck this philosophy, What happens? December evening, very cold. He requires a shelter. It is given to him, and what a generous and kind man. He gave him food to eat and tobacco to smoke. Then they played cards. The lonely old man who was owner of the cabin was generous and trustful. He was trustful. He told the peddler that he had a cow and he sold the milk to a creamery. He should not have done this, but he was trustful. He said that it was his side income. He also told him that he had received 30 kroners, rupees there, 30 kroners as payment, currency of that country. He also told that he had received 30 kroners as payment. Then he took down the pouch and showed the money to the red trap peddler. He showed the money to the red trap peddler. Next morning the peddler left. The crofter locked his cottage. The crofter locked his cottage and went away. The peddler came back, but the peddler came back to the cottage. The peddler came back to the cottage. He had been tempted to steal the money like a bite in the rat trap, as mouse comes in to eat the food in the rat trap, as rat comes in to eat the food in the rat trap, and the shutters put down and the rat is trapped. Just like the rat trap seller had been tempted to steal the money like a bite in the rat trap. We shall continue in the next lecture. Thank you.